Why did every officer on the deck go silent the moment she stepped out of the shadows? At first, no one understood what they were seeing. She looked like a stranger, dusty boots, an old uniform, a quiet posture that didn't demand attention yet somehow absorbed the entire horizon. The destroyer Aegis Dawn was in the middle of inspection, sunlight slicing over metal rails and rolling blue water, but the mood shifted the second she appeared, like the ocean itself paused to look. No one saluted her. No one even asked her name. She moved like someone who had been forgotten on purpose, a ghost walking into daylight. And maybe that was why some of the crew snickered, nudging each other at the sight of her outdated insignia and weathered gear. But she didn't flinch. Her eyes were fixed on something far away, something only she knew was coming. Then the Admiral spotted her. He turned with a half-amused smile, hands behind his back, expression casual in the way of someone who'd spent decades in command and rarely been surprised. "You there," he called out, loud enough to turn a few heads. "What's your rank, sailor? Don't tell me you snuck aboard hopping to polish some brass." Laughter, a few chuckles from the junior officers, but her expression didn't shift. She simply stood there, letting the wind skim across her face, the angel-white reflection of the sea brushing her eyes. For a moment she seemed not to hear him, or maybe she was deciding something, whether to speak, or whether to let the silence speak for her. Finally she looked up. "Fleet Commander," she said quietly. Everything froze. The Admiral's grin collapsed. The sailors' smiles died in their throats. Even the clanging of metal and ropes seemed to dim into the background, leaving only the steady heartbeat of the ocean. It was the kind of silence that arrives only when a truth cuts clean through pride. The Admiral blinked. "I'm sorry, did you say Fleet Commander?" "Yes, sir," she replied. No emotion, no tremor, just a fact placed carefully on the steel deck. "Fleet Commander Samantha Rowan. I was ordered to assume command of Task Force 7, effective today." The name hit the Admiral so hard he almost staggered. Samantha Rowan, the woman whose death report he had signed, the woman who had disappeared in smoke and fire on the Titan, the worst naval blaze in 2 decades, the woman whose body was never recovered, the woman people still whispered about when they talked of impossible survival. "You," he muttered, "you were on the Titan, you're dead." Her eyes met his steady, cold, familiar in a way that reopened old wounds. "That's what the report said. But reports aren't always the truth, are they, Admiral?" A tremor passed through his jaw. Around them, every sailor stood rigid, breaths held in suspense. They didn't know the story behind that fire. They didn't know that when the Titan burst into flames, when alarms screamed and steel melted, when the chain of command crumbled and smoke choked out daylight, the retreat order came too early, too fast, too afraid. 37 of my people made it off the Titan," she continued softly. "The 38th didn't, because someone ordered withdrawal before the lower deck could be reached." She didn't raise her voice. She didn't accuse, but the truth cut deeper than shouting ever could. The Admiral swallowed. Years of buried guilt crawled back through his expression, the radio static, the flames, the screams he'd tried to erase. He remembered convincing himself he had saved who he could, but he never forgot the face of the one he couldn't. I thought. I didn't come back for explanations," she said gently, raising a hand. "I came back because what we lost that day wasn't just people. We lost integrity, and I won't let that stay buried." Her words weren't angry. They were tired, worn by years of wandering, surviving, hiding. There was something fragile beneath her steadiness, a pain she wasn't ready to reveal, not yet. But it was there in the way her shoulders tightened, in the way she inhaled like someone who carried the weight of too many memories. The Admiral finally removed his cap, each finger trembling. "Fleet Commander Rowan," his voice broke. "Welcome aboard." She returned the salute with a sharp, flawless gesture, but her eyes held something haunted, something unfinished. Across the deck, whispers rippled like waves pushing against hull steel. The woman they thought dead had returned, but not as they remembered her, not as the bright young officer who had once laughed easily and moved with confidence. Now she carried silence like armor. Now she walked as though she belonged to the storm. Later that evening, while the Aegis dawn cut across the Pacific, the wind grew softer, the sky glowed in shades of fatting gold, and Rowan stood alone on the observation deck. Her hands rested on the rail. The ocean stretched endlessly before her, calm, patient, unknowable. Why had she really come back? Only she knew. But the shape of the truth lived behind her eyes, something she wasn't ready to say aloud, something connected to the night of the Titan disaster, to the scream that still woke her from dreams, the voice she failed to reach in time. She exhaled slowly. She could still smell the smoke. She could still hear the last words someone whispered to her before the flames swallowed the corridor. Her name, just her name. Samantha. Her jaw tightened, she shut her eyes. She hadn't come back to accuse the Admiral. She hadn't returned for rank or power or redemption in the eyes of the Navy. She returned because unfinished stories do not fade. Because someone on that ship, someone she cared about, had died believing she would save them. And she hadn't. But there was something else, something darker, something only she knew. Something she hadn't told anyone on the Aegis Dawn. Not yet. Because the truth wasn't that she survived the Titan. The truth was that she wasn't supposed to. Why did she freeze at the sound of that distant engine hum? It was barely audible under the rumble of the ship, but something in it clawed its way straight into her memory. Rowan's fingers tightened around the cold railing as she stared into the horizon, a faint tremor passing through her breath. Every instinct she had honed over years on the sea sharpened at once. She didn't turn, didn't speak. She simply listened. Because the last time she heard that specific pitch, an entire ship died. She blinked slowly, pushing the memory down before it swallowed her. This wasn't the Titan. This wasn't smoke and darkness. This was a new mission she hadn't told the crew about, something sealed under layers of clearance most admirals didn't even know existed. She wasn't here only to assume command of Task Force 7. She was here because a threat had resurfaced, something connected to the very fire she had survived. But the officers moving across the deck didn't know that. To them, she was an unexpected ghost, a living contradiction. They kept glancing at her, some out of awe, others curiosity, a few with quiet fear. She could feel them studying her scars, the faint burn line that vanished beneath her collar, the way her left hand never fully relaxed. They wondered how she survived. They wondered where she had been. Not even the Admiral dared ask. "Ma'am," a young ensign said, approaching her carefully, as though she might vanish if he stepped too loud. "The bridge requested your presence whenever you're ready." Rowan nodded, but her eyes didn't leave the horizon. The ensign hesitated. "Is everything all right, ma'am?" She almost answered honestly, almost told him no, that something was wrong, terribly wrong, that the ocean was holding its breath the same way it had on the night the Titan burned. But she inhaled and steadied herself. "Everything's fine," she said softly, turning away from the water. "Fine." A word she had repeated too many times in her life, mostly when it wasn't true. On the way to the bridge, sailors stepped aside instinctively. The weight of her rank settled over the room long before she entered. But respect wasn't what lingered around her. It was the quiet, unspoken awareness that she'd walked through something most people wouldn't survive. As she passed the operations station, two junior officers whispered under their breath, "Is it really her? They said she was gone for 6 years." But how? Nobody lasts that long off-grid. Rowan didn't turn, but her footsteps slowed. 6 years. It wasn't the time that haunted her. It was the gap, the blank spaces in the official records, the missions that had no names, the coordinates that had been wiped, the faces she couldn't forget even when she tried. She stepped onto the bridge. Screens glowed, radios crackled, officers stood rigid. The Admiral straightened quickly as she entered, clearing his throat as though trying to appear composed. "Fleet Commander Rowan," he said, forcing steadiness into his voice. "We're preparing your operational brief." "Good," she replied, "because I need Task Force 7 mobilized in under 18 hours. The Admiral's jaw tightened. "May I ask why the urgency?" Her gaze drifted over the ocean once more through the wide glass windows, watching the sunlight ripple like a blade over the waves. "There's a signal," she said, "encrypted, buried deep in the Pacific grid. It matches a pattern from the Titan." She stopped. The Admiral swallowed. "From the night of the fire." She didn't answer directly. "That signal wasn't random then. It isn't random now." A heavy silence settled over the bridge. Rowan continued, her voice low. "Someone triggered the same algorithm again, and if I'm right, the people behind it don't know I'm alive." The words felt sharp but necessary. The Admiral stared at her. "You think the Titan disaster was—" "Not an accident," she finished for him. "We were targeted, and whoever tried to bury me with that ship doesn't realize their mistake." Whispers rippled through the room like falling dominoes, but Rowan ignored them. She leaned over the plotting table, tracing the coordinates with her fingertip. Each digit felt like a bruise she'd carried too long. The Admiral stepped closer. "Rowan, 6 years away from the fleet, classified personnel files locked, no contact with any command. Where were you?" Her hand froze. She didn't want to answer. Not because she couldn't, but because the truth wasn't just painful. It was dangerous. "I was following the signal," she said finally. "It took me places you wouldn't believe. Remote outposts, black sites, wrecked hulls at the bottom of the South Pacific. Every lead pointed to one thing." She looked up at him, her expression shadowed. "Someone inside our own chain of command helped initiate the Titan fire." The Admiral's face went pale. Rowan's voice softened, almost fragile. "I wasn't supposed to survive, and neither was anyone who knew what we were really carrying on board." For a moment, no one breathed. Not the Admiral. Not the officers. Not Rowan herself. Then a loud tone pierced the bridge, a priority transmission, an urgent one. The communications officer stiffened. "Sir, ma'am, unknown vessel detected on rapid approach. No ID signature." Rowan turned sharply. "Distance." 18 nautical miles and closing fast. The Admiral moved beside her. "Could be civilian." "Civilian ships don't kill their transponders," Rowan said, "or approach at combat speed." The officer swallowed. "What are your orders, ma'am?" Rowan's heartbeat slowed, not with fear, but with the eerie calm of someone stepping back into a world she had never truly left. A world of threats hidden under silence. "Bring the ship to alert condition yellow," she said. "No weapons hot yet. We observe first." The Admiral frowned. "You think they followed you?" Rowan didn't answer, but she knew the truth. They hadn't followed her. They had been waiting for her. As the Aegis Dawn shifted into alert posture, Rowan felt a familiar tightness in her chest, anxiety mixed with anger, determination wrestling with the ache of memories she wished she could bury. She pressed a hand briefly against the console, grounding herself. She wasn't afraid of danger. She was afraid of what danger forced her to remember. The smell of burning metal. The sound of boots hitting the failing deck. The weight of one person in her arms as she dragged him through the smoke. And the moment she realized she wouldn't make it back for him. She blinked, forcing the memory away. There was no space for weakness here, not now. The communications officer spoke up again. "Ma'am, the unidentified vessel has stopped moving. It's drifting." Rowan narrowed her eyes. "Drifting. Like it's observing us." A strange chill crept along the back of her neck. That wasn't a civilian maneuver. That was something else. Something she had seen before. Her voice lowered. "Keep all channels open. Don't signal them yet." The Admiral looked at her carefully. "Rowan, what aren't you telling me?" She slowly exhaled, eyes never leaving the drifting shape on the horizon. "The night the Titan burned," she whispered, "we weren't alone out there." The Admiral's breath hitched. Rowan continued, voice cracking at the edges, "And the ship that watched us die didn't save us. It waited to make sure we burned." All at once, everything around her felt colder. She wasn't the same officer who once believed every ally was true. She was someone rebuilt from ash and betrayal. And now the past had come back, not as memory, but as steel on the horizon. But there was something she hadn't told anyone yet. Something buried deeper than the truth of the Titan. Something that kept her awake more nights than she could count. She wasn't just here to confront the people who tried to kill her. She was here because they had taken someone from her, someone she cared for more than she ever admitted, someone whose voice still echoed in her dreams. She wasn't after justice. She was after answers. And she would tear open the ocean to find them. Why did the drifting vessel feel more familiar than it should? Rowan stood at the bridge window, her breath steady but her pulse sharp enough to feel in her fingertips. The shape on the horizon was still distant, still blurred by heat waves and sunlight reflection, but something about its posture, its stillness, struck her deeper than she wanted to admit. Ships didn't drift like that unless someone wanted them to be found, or unless no one was left on board. She leaned forward slightly, magnify. The screen sharpened, grainy, then clearer. The hull was dark and scarred, too newly damaged to be a derelict but too quiet to be an active patrol craft. The Admiral studied the feed beside her, brows drawn. "That's unmarked," he whispered. "No nation, no service branch, nothing." Rowan didn't respond. Her throat felt tight, as if memory itself were pulling a thread through her lungs. The last time she saw a ship like that, she had been lying on the floor of a burning corridor, smoke clawing into her chest, flames crawling up bulkheads like living shadows. The Titan hadn't just burned. It had been hunted. The Admiral cleared his throat softly. "Rowan, talk to me. What are we looking at?" She inhaled slowly. "A ghost," she murmured, "one I hoped never to see again." The Admiral's eyes widened. "You recognize it?" "Not the hull," she said, "but the configuration, the shape, the signature." A pause. "Signature," he repeated carefully. She turned from the window, her voice low, almost ashamed. "Before the Titan went silent, we intercepted a coded burst, short, almost a whisper, but the signal didn't match any known fleet, ours or foreign." The Admiral frowned. "And you think this ship sent it?" Rowan looked back at the drifting silhouette. "I think this ship watched us die." A ripple of unease passed through the bridge. But Rowan's expression wasn't fear. It was something heavier, more painful. The weight of a truth she'd carried alone for too long. She rested her hands on the console, closing her eyes for a moment. She could feel it again. The pressure of the emergency mask cutting into her face. The heat crawling across her arms. The moment she realized the escape route was collapsing. And the whisper. His voice. Her eyes snapped open before the memory drowned her completely. Not here, not in front of them. The comms operator swallowed hard. "Ma'am, the vessel remains stationary. Should we attempt to hail?" Rowan didn't answer immediately. Her mind traced the gap between past and present. The ship on the horizon wasn't idle. It was intentional, a message, a reminder. Finally she shook her head. "Not yet." We approached slow. The Admiral glanced sharply at her. "Rowan, if this is what you think it is." "It's not a threat yet," she cut in softly. "It's a warning." Her voice dropped. "They want me to come closer." The Admiral stiffened. "You think this is for you?" "I don't think," she said. "I know." The bridge fell silent again. Rowan's hand brushed subconsciously over her left sleeve, right where a faint line of burned fabric had been expertly repaired. She hadn't told them how she escaped the Titan. She hadn't told them who helped her or who didn't make it out. Some truths were still bleeding inside her. "Sir," the radar officer murmured, "vessel is not powered. We're not detecting heat signatures from the engines." Rowan's jaw tightened. "Then it's a marker." "A marker," someone whispered. She nodded, something left behind as a sign or a message. Her eyes narrowed, or a trap. Her gaze drifted across the faces in the room, officers too young to know what fear felt like when it wasn't textbook but real. Some watched her with worry, others with trust she didn't think she deserved. And behind all of it, behind the professional composure and rigid posture, Rowan sensed something else. They wanted to believe in her. Maybe more than she believed in herself. A soft ache threaded into her chest. Before anyone could speak, a quiet voice broke the tension. A woman, Lieutenant Jorah Hale, stepped forward from navigation. "Ma'am," she said softly, "if I may, why would they leave a message for you?" Rowan didn't answer right away. Because the true answer hurt. Because it forced her to say aloud something she'd buried for 6 years. Because once she said it, nothing could go back to silence. Finally, she replied, barely above a whisper, "Because I was the last one alive on the Titan who knew what we were carrying." A heavy beat. The Admiral swallowed. "Rowan, whatever this is, you don't have to face it alone." Her eyes flickered toward him, weary, conflicted, grateful, but guarded. "You're wrong," she murmured. "I've been alone with this since the night it happened." A tremor ran along her breath. "This isn't just another mission for me. It's the one that never ended." The Admiral opened his mouth to speak, but a sharp alarm cut him off. The comms officer straightened. "Ma'am, faint transmission, extremely low power. Origin appears to be the drifting vessel." Rowan's head snapped toward the speakers. "Put it through," she commanded. Static crackled, faint, broken, almost like someone was whispering from underwater. The bridge leaned in, anxious, waiting. Then a fragment of a voice slipped through. "Rowan." Every muscle in her body turned to stone. The Admiral stared at her. Did that?" "Yes," she whispered. "It said my name." Is it possible it's a recording?" "No," Rowan said, breath shaking. "That voice." She stopped before her voice cracked. Her hands trembled. That voice belonged to someone she had thought gone forever, someone she had loved in silence, someone whose death had carved a wound no metal could hide. Her heart thudded painfully against her ribs. The comms officer wiped sweat from his brow. "There's more incoming, trying to clean it up." Static twisted again, garbled frequencies, a low tone, then "Sam, don't trust." The transmission dissolved into a harsh hiss. The room froze. The Admiral swallowed. "Sam," he repeated quietly, turning toward her. "Someone called you Sam." Rowan's expression shattered for a split second, a crack in armored steel. A glimpse of the woman underneath, the one who once laughed easily, who once believed the Navy was unbreakable, who once cared deeply for someone she never got the chance to save. She closed her eyes, fighting the sudden burn of emotion behind them. She didn't cry. Not here. Not in front of the people she had to lead. But the pain was real. "Prepare a boarding team," she said softly. The Admiral blinked. "Rowan." "Prepare it," she repeated. "Ma'am, we don't know what's on that ship." "Yes," she whispered, "I do." A long silence followed. Lieutenant Hale's voice trembled slightly. "Ma'am, what if it's a trap?" Rowan turned slowly, her face pale, her eyes dark with the weight of everything she carried. "Then let them try," she said, "because I stopped running 6 years ago." But there was something she didn't say aloud, something she didn't dare. What if the voice wasn't a trap? What if it was real? What if the one person she lost wasn't gone? Hope, dangerous, fragile hope, flickered deep in her chest. And hope, she knew, could break a soldier faster than fear. Why did her hands shake the moment she stepped into the armory? She had walked into firefights with steadier breath, faced down infernos with calmer nerves. But something about preparing to board that silent vessel, the one that whispered her name across the ocean, tore open a part of her she'd spent 6 years stitching shut. The petty officer at the weapon rack paused when he saw her. "Ma'am, your gear is ready." Rowan nodded, lifting the vest, feeling the weight settle onto her shoulders like a memory she wasn't ready to relive. She checked the sidearm, the comms unit, the tactical beacon. Everything felt familiar but also heavier. Every piece a reminder of what she survived, and who she didn't. Footsteps approached behind her. "Fleet Commander," the Admiral said quietly, "you're personally leading the boarding team." "Yes," she replied without turning. "You don't need to." She cut him off gently. "I do." He hesitated. "Rowan, whatever you think you heard." "I know what I heard," she said, tightening the last strap. "And even if it wasn't him, it was meant for me." The Admiral exhaled heavily. "You cared about him, didn't you?" Rowan froze mid-motion. For a moment she didn't speak, didn't move. The question wasn't an accusation. It wasn't even curiosity. It was understanding, the kind that comes from someone who has seen enough loss to recognize the look in another person's eyes. She closed her fingers around the grip of her weapon, steadying her voice. "It doesn't matter," she said softly. "He's gone." But her throat tightened, and the Admiral saw through her. "You never let yourself grieve," he murmured. Rowan swallowed hard. "We don't have time for this conversation." He didn't push further. Something in her voice, the edge between strength and breaking, warned him away. He stepped back as she approached the hatch. "If this is what I think it is, I'm sorry." Rowan hesitated for just a breath. "So am I." The boarding team assembled near the launch bay, 8 sailors, tense and wide-eyed. They had trained for unknown vessel operations, but this felt different. The silence of the drifting ship hung over them, a presence, a shadow. Lieutenant Hale moved to Rowan's side. "Ma'am, we're ready." Rowan nodded, stepping into the craft. The hum of the engines vibrated through the floor as the hatch sealed behind them. As they launched from the Aegis Dawn, the ocean stretched endlessly around them. The small craft cut through the water like a dark arrow toward the waiting shape. Rowan sat at the front, her helmet in her lap, her mind far away. What if the voice was real? What if he had survived? What if he had been trapped? Alone. Afraid. Waiting for her. The guilt hit her like it always did, the heavy, suffocating guilt of someone who lived when another didn't. She gripped the seat, closing her eyes. She could still see him. The soot on his face. The way he shoved her toward the emergency ladder. The way he shouted her name, not Commander, not Rowan. "Sam." She forced open her eyes as the vessel loomed closer. 200 meters, the pilot announced. The drifting ship looked worse up close. Black scorch marks streaked its hull. Portions of metal bent outward as though something had exploded inside. Windows were dark. Every shadow felt too deep, too still. Lieutenant Hale exhaled. "Ma'am, I don't like this." Neither did Rowan. But she breathed evenly, steady, calm, even as her heart knocked painfully beneath her ribs. "Lights," she ordered. The spot beams flicked on, sweeping across the hull. A large breach along the starboard side gaped open like a wound. "Board through there," Rowan said. As the craft latched onto the broken metal, a sharp metallic echo reverberated, not from the sea, but from inside the vessel. The team froze. The pilot looked back. "Ma'am." Rowan stood slowly, weapon ready, opened the hatch. The air that flooded in smelled of burned wiring and cold steel, but no decay, no bodies. Lieutenant Hale swallowed, no signs of crew. "Stay close," Rowan said. "No one wanders, no sound unless necessary." They stepped inside. Flashlights sliced through darkness, revealing narrow corridors, peeling panels, empty bunks. Silence clung to the walls like dust. The ship felt less abandoned and more paused, as if someone would step out at any moment. Every few steps, Rowan felt an echo under her boots, the same structural layout as the Titan, same blueprint, same confined turns, same metallic groans. Her pulse quickened. "Lieutenant," one sailor whispered, "I'm getting interference on my comms." A sharp crackle filled the air. Then a voice, faint, fractured, ghost-like, whispered through the static. "Sam." Rowan froze. Her breath hitched, her fingers went numb. Hale's eyes widened. "Ma'am." Rowan's flashlight trembled slightly as she scanned the corridor ahead. That came from deeper inside. "Ma'am, wait." But Rowan stepped forward, past the team, past the broken beam, past the fear clawing up her spine. She couldn't help it. "Sam." The whisper came again, more desperate, more strained. Her heartbeat thundered. "Rowan," the Admiral's voice boomed suddenly through her comms. "We're reading an energy spike inside that ship. You need to pull." The transmission cut abruptly. "Comms are down," Hale shouted. Rowan didn't stop. She kept walking, kept breathing, kept chasing the one voice she had tried and failed to save. The corridor opened into a small command room. Debris littered the floor. A smashed console flickered weakly. A dim emergency light pulsed like a dying heartbeat. And on the far wall, scrawled in soot, uneven but unmistakable, were letters. 3 letters. Her breath caught violently. "SAM." Lieutenant Hale's voice cracked. "Oh my God." Rowan touched the wall gently with her glove. The soot smeared slightly, recent, not old. Her throat tightened painfully. He had been here. Alive. Longer than anyone believed. Her eyes burned. She blinked quickly, refusing to let tears fall. A loud metallic slam echoed from deeper in the ship. The team spun around, weapons raised. "Movement," a sailor yelled. "Positions," Hale commanded. Rowan didn't raise her weapon. She stared into the darkness, her heart too full, too terrified to hope. Another sound, slow, heavy, like footsteps dragging across metal. Someone or something was coming closer. Rowan's breath shook. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Please let it be him." But as the shadow grew in the corridor, she knew something was wrong. The footsteps were uneven, mechanical, and the silhouette was too tall to be human. Hale shouted, "Ma'am, get back." Rowan stepped forward instead. "No," she breathed, her voice cracking. They wouldn't have turned him into." Another slam. A distorted voice, not fully human, scraped through the dark. "Rowan." Her blood turned ice. Because whoever, whatever, was walking toward her wasn't the man she remembered. Why did the air suddenly feel too thin to breathe? Rowan's chest tightened as the distorted silhouette staggered into view, tall, uneven, partially mechanical. Sparks flickered from its left side. Its right arm dragged along the wall, leaving a metallic screech that made the entire team flinch. But Rowan didn't move. She couldn't. Every instinct screamed to step back. Every memory screamed to hope. She stood balanced on a knife edge between terror and longing, her weapon dipping slightly as a broken voice pushed through static again. "Rowan." Her stomach twisted. Lieutenant Hale raised her rifle, voice sharp with panic. "Ma'am, step back now." Rowan lifted a hand, not to defend herself but to stop her own team. "Hold your fire." "But—" "Hold it." Her voice cracked with a command she didn't fully trust. The figure limped closer. Under the flickering emergency light, the shape began to take form, metal plating grafted where skin should be, cables running like veins into a half-destroyed suit, and a helmet fused to the head, visor cracked and sparking. It kept walking toward her. Slow, painful, almost pleading. The sailors shifted nervously. Hale's breath trembled. "Ma'am, what if it's hostile?" Rowan's voice shook. "If it wanted us dead, we'd already be dead." She didn't look away from the figure, from the way its remaining eye, human and bloodshot, flickered behind the cracked visor. She recognized that eye. Her own heart collapsed inward. No, it couldn't be. "Sam," the voice rasped again, glitching through layers of broken modulation. "You came." Her breath hitched painfully. Her knees nearly buckled. "Take off the helmet," Rowan whispered. The figure froze, head twitching slightly as if trying to process the order. A moment passed. 2. Then it lifted a damaged arm, fingers trembling violently as it reached for the fused metal where a face should be. Hale stepped in front of Rowan in an instant. "No, ma'am, we don't know what that thing is." Rowan pushed past her gently, almost tenderly. "I know exactly what it is." The figure's fingers clawed weakly at the helmet, unable to remove it fully, but just enough metal shifted that Rowan saw the truth beneath it. The scars, the burned skin, the jawline she knew like a memory of warmth, and the faint shape of his mouth trembling through pain. Lieutenant Commander Elias Ward, the man she left behind on the Titan, the man she couldn't save, the man she mourned every day in silence. Hale gasped, "Dear God." He tried to step forward, but his right leg buckled. He collapsed with a heavy metallic thud that echoed through the broken corridor. Rowan dropped beside him before anyone could stop her. "Elias," her voice broke softly, painfully. "What did they do to you?" His one visible eye glistened. A tear, real, human, fragile, streaked across his soot-stained cheek. "Sam," he whispered, glitching. They thought you died. I tried to stop them." He coughed, sparks crackling from his chest. Hale, kneeling beside them, quickly scanned for threats, but there was no movement, no ambush, nothing but the suffocating truth in front of them. Rowan touched the metal plating grafted to his body. It felt warm, beating, alive in a way that made her stomach churn. "They rebuilt you," she whispered, "forced you into this." "Not rebuilt," he rasped, voice glitching. "Experimented." Her heart shattered. She had imagined him dying quickly in the Titan fire, not this. Not taken, not transformed, not turned into a weapon. "Who did this?" she whispered. "Who took you?" His human eye flickered with fear, real fear. "Someone on the inside." The words cut deeper than any blade. Hale's breath stuttered. "Ma'am, we need to evacuate him, whatever they did." Elias' hand shot up, metallic fingers wrapping shakily around Rowan's wrist. "No," his voice cracked. "Trap, Sam, it's a trap." Rowan's pulse spiked. "What do you mean a trap?" "They're coming." A deep rumble vibrated through the ship. Dust drifted from the ceiling. The lights flickered. Hale turned sharply. "We need to move now." Rowan tried to lift Elias with Hale's help, but his heavily grafted frame was far heavier than a human body. "Come on," she whispered urgently. "We're getting you out. I'm not leaving you again." His grip tightened painfully. "Sam, listen." "I am listening." Her voice cracked through rising panic. "Just hold on." He shook his head violently. "Sam, look at me." She froze. His human eye steadied on hers, not pleading, not fearful. "Apologizing. You shouldn't have come." The floor lurched beneath them. An explosion ripped through the corridor behind them, not external but internal. A controlled detonation, deliberate. Hale shouted, "Move, move." Elias pulled Rowan closer, whispering with all the strength he had left. "They used me to bring you here." Her blood went cold. "They want you, Sam, not me." Another explosion hit, closer this time. Fire swept through the corridor in a violent rush of heat. The team staggered back. Elias shoved Rowan with more strength than she expected, sending her sliding across the floor toward Hale. No, Rowan screamed, scrambling, reaching for him. Elias. He looked at her one last time, agony carved across what remained of his face. Go. Rowan's breath shattered. He pressed a damaged hand to the ground, triggering something built into his mechanical frame. A red glow pulsed beneath his chest plating. Self-destruct. Rowan lunged toward him, but Hale tackled her back as a blinding flash erupted from Elias' body. The explosion tore through the corridor, shaking the entire vessel. Fire and metal shrieked as the boarding team scrambled backward, shielding Rowan with their bodies. When the blast faded, smoke billowed through the space. Rowan shoved Hale off her and crawled toward the burning wreckage. No, no, Elias. Destroyed metal. Nothing human left. Nothing that could be saved. Her breath broke, her vision blurred with a pain she couldn't contain. Hale knelt beside her, voice shaking. Ma'am, we have to go, this ship is collapsing. But Rowan didn't move. Hale grabbed her arm. Fleet Commander, look at me. If he detonated himself, he did it to save you. Rowan's voice trembled raw. No, they turned him into this, and then they made him kill himself. Another explosion rocked the vessel. The hull groaned loudly. Hale raised her voice. Rowan, if we stay, we die. Now get up. Rowan wiped her face, forcing herself back into the world, into her body, into command. Her heart felt carved out, hollow, but she stood. We're not leaving empty-handed, she whispered hoarsely. Hale frowned. Ma'am. Rowan pointed to the scorched wall, to the soot-marked letters she touched earlier. Sam. We're taking that panel, she said. Elias wrote that in his last moments. It's evidence. Her voice cracked on the last word. The team pried the metal free as flames surged toward them. They sprinted, choking on smoke, tripping over debris. The boarding craft came into view through the collapsing hull. Move. Hale shoved Rowan into the craft just as the ship ruptured behind them. The vessel collapsed into the sea with a monstrous groan. As they sped back toward the Aegis Dawn, Rowan watched the wreckage burn on the waves. Hale sat beside her in silence, letting the grief settle where no words could reach. Rowan finally whispered, almost to herself. They didn't just take him. They used him as bait. And now they know I'm alive. For the first time in years, fear settled into her bones, not for herself, but for what was coming. And someone on her own side was helping it happen. Why was the deck so silent when they returned? The boarding craft clamped onto the Aegis Dawn with a metallic bite, but not a single sailor rushed forward, not a single voice called out. It felt as if the entire ship already sensed something had gone terribly wrong. Rowan stepped out last. Her boots hit the steel deck, still wet with sea spray. Lieutenant Hale followed behind her, carrying the scorched panel with the letters smeared across it. Sam. The only proof Elias Ward had been alive and the only thing left of him. The Admiral approached quickly, worry etched deep into his expression. Rowan, what happened in there? Rowan didn't answer immediately. The smoke from the ruined vessel drifted across the horizon like a long, dark bruise on the water. She watched it for a moment, her jaw trembling once before she forced it still. He's gone, she said finally, and what we found wasn't just a body. The Admiral studied her face, the hollow grief, the hardening resolve beneath it. His voice dropped. It was him, wasn't it? Rowan's eyes burned. What was left of him? A few sailors nearby lowered their heads. The Titan disaster was a story many aboard had heard, but seeing Rowan now, the rawness in her eyes, the tension in her shoulders, made it real in a way rumors never could. Admiral, Hale said, voice quiet, we found a message. In his handwriting, he knew she would come. Rowan inhaled sharply, trying to steady her breath, but the guilt coiled tight inside her chest. She didn't want to cry. She wouldn't. Not here. Not in front of those she had to lead. But her voice still cracked. They turned him into something he was, used him to lure me in, and before we could save him. She bit down hard on the rest. The Admiral stepped closer. I'm sorry, Commander. Rowan shut her eyes. He told me it was a trap. Do we know who said it? Hale asked. Rowan opened her eyes again. Anger simmered beneath the grief now, a quiet, controlled anger that made her look more dangerous than any weapon on board. We know one thing, she said. Someone in our chain of command authorized the experiment that kept him alive. The Admiral's jaw clenched. We need proof. We have it, Rowan pointed to the scorched metal Hale held, and I'm not done. The Admiral hesitated. Rowan, you're exhausted, take a moment. She shook her head. There's no time. The people who did this, whoever they are, they know I'm alive now. Elias warned me before he. Her words faltered. The Admiral placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. You did everything you could. Rowan looked up at him, eyes sharp with pain. No, Admiral, I didn't. The first time I left him behind. He wanted to argue, but he couldn't. And Rowan didn't wait for permission. Get me the operations room, she said. We're elevating to full alert. Hale straightened. Yes, ma'am. The Admiral exhaled. I'll inform the fleet. As they moved toward the interior, sailors stepped aside quietly, watching her not with pity but with something else. Respect, maybe even fear. Rowan didn't notice. Her mind was somewhere else entirely. Somewhere darker. Somewhere that smelled like burning metal and sounded like a man calling her name for the last time. Inside the operations center, the lights were low, screens glowing with map overlays, radar sweeps, and encrypted message traffic. Officers looked up the moment she entered. Ma'am, one said nervously, we're detecting small-scale debris from the unidentified vessel. Let it burn, Rowan murmured. The officer swallowed, understood. Rowan approached the main display table, placing the scorched panel gently on its surface. The three letters stared back at her like an accusation she could never outrun. The Admiral stood beside her. Rowan, whatever we do next, you don't have to carry this alone. She didn't look up. I've been alone with it for 6 years. There was no bitterness in her voice, just truth. Let's solve it together, the Admiral said quietly. Rowan studied the encrypted data feed, scrolling across the display screens. The Admiral frowned. You're thinking something. I'm thinking Elias wasn't just captured, she said. He was studied, modified, used. The Admiral nodded slowly. So what do we do? Rowan's eyes hardened. We follow the signal that ship used to call him. Hale approached. Ma'am, we managed to extract a fragment of the transmission he sent. Rowan turned sharply. Play it. Hale nodded to the comms officer, who tapped a sequence. Static. Then the broken voice. Sam, don't trust. The audio crackled into silence. Rowan gripped the table so hard her knuckles went white. He wasn't warning me about the ship. He was warning me about someone here. The room froze. The Admiral stiffened. Here, on board. No, Rowan whispered, higher. How high? Hale asked. Rowan looked up, her expression hollow and chilling. High enough to bury the Titan report, she said. High enough to erase 6 years of my existence. The Admiral's throat tightened. High command. Rowan didn't answer. She didn't need to. The weight of her silence was answer enough. Hours passed. The Aegis Dawn moved under red alert. Patrols doubled. Communications encrypted. Plans drawn quietly behind closed doors. And Rowan, she paced the observation deck alone, the wind cold against her face, the endless ocean stretching out beneath a bruised sky. For the first time since she climbed aboard, she let her shoulders sag under the grief she'd been carrying. Elias had been more than a fellow officer. More than a friend. More than what the Navy would ever allow them to admit. He had been her anchor. And she had lost him twice. She bowed her head, exhaling a trembling breath she had held for 6 years. I'm sorry, she whispered into the wind. I should have gone back for you. But the truth struck her harder than the guilt. They didn't keep him alive to torture him. They kept him alive because he knew something. Something worth silencing. And Elias, in his last moment, chose to warn her instead. Sam, her own voice cracked. You died saving me, and I couldn't save you. She wiped her face roughly, forcing the weakness away. No more crying. No more running. No more silence. A soft footstep behind her. Rowan didn't turn. Hale. Yes, ma'am. Hale stepped beside her. The Admiral asked for you. We have a lead. Rowan straightened, wiping the last fragment of emotion from her eyes. On the signal. Worse, Hale said. On the person who authorized the experiment. Rowan turned fully. Who? Hale swallowed, and then said the name Rowan feared most. A Vice Admiral in Pacific Command. Rowan's breath stilled. She knew that rank. She knew that circle. She knew exactly who held that office. Her voice barely rose above a whisper. It's him. Hale hesitated. Ma'am, you know him. Rowan nodded slowly, dread bleeding into her voice. Yes, she said. He was on the Titan with us. He left before the fire reached the lower decks. Her eyes darkened with a truth she had denied for years. And he was the one who ordered the retreat. Hale's eyes widened. Ma'am, are you saying? Rowan breathed out, every wound in her chest reopening, every fear sharpening into clarity. I think he lit the match, she said. And I think he came back to finish the job. Why did the room seem to tilt when Hale said his name out loud? Rowan felt the world narrow into a tunnel, the hum of the ship fading, the distant chatter dissolving. Only her heartbeat remained, loud enough to drown out reason. Vice Admiral Marcus Redden. A mentor once. A hero to many. A shadow to her. And the man who had given the retreat order, the order that condemned the lower decks of the Titan to flame. Hale's voice broke through the quiet. Ma'am, we don't have confirmation yet. We don't know his intent. Rowan turned toward her slowly, eyes hollow but burning. His intent was written in the fire that killed my crew. Hale swallowed hard. But sabotaging a Navy ship, experimenting on our own, that's unthinkable, Rowan murmured. Yes, that's why they buried it. The Admiral stepped forward, the tension visible in the lines of his face. Rowan, we have to tread carefully. These accusations, if true, could fracture the entire Pacific Command. Rowan's voice sharpened. The fracture already happened, 6 years ago, when someone decided the truth was too dangerous to leave alive. The Admiral exhaled heavily, rubbing his forehead. We need evidence, hard evidence. Rowan nodded. Then we find it before he finds us. For a moment the room fell silent. Officers watched her with a mixture of awe and fear, the kind reserved for someone who had come back from the dead, carrying a secret too heavy for one person. Finally Hale broke the silence. There's more. Rowan stiffened. More. Hale handed her a tablet. Just decoded it from the data Elias' body emitted before he self-destructed. Rowan hesitated before taking it. Her hands shook as she opened the file. A series of distorted images flickered across the screen, security footage, lab logs, partial schematics of invasive cybernetic grafting. But one image froze her completely. A timestamp. A location. A blurry figure in an officer's coat, but unmistakable in posture. Vice Admiral Marcus, Redden standing beside Elias Ward's restrained body. Rowan's throat tightened painfully. Hale whispered, Ma'am, he was there. Rowan closed her eyes just for a moment, as the weight of 6 years crashed into her chest. He had known Elias was alive. He had kept it hidden. He had turned him into bait. The Admiral stepped closer. Rowan, what do you want to do? She opened her eyes. and the look she gave him was the steadiest, coldest, most determined expression she'd worn since boarding the Aegis Dawn. "We go after him." The Admiral nodded grimly. "Then we prepare a task force." "No," Rowan shook her head. "We do this quietly. If we move openly, he'll disappear, and we'll never see him again." The Admiral studied her. "This isn't just a mission for you." Rowan's expression cracked only slightly. "No, it's not." Night fell over the Pacific, silent and heavy. The Aegis Dawn sliced through dark waves, her lights dimmed, her crew operating in hushed alert. Rowan stood on the upper deck, the cold wind cutting against her face, but she welcomed it. It kept her awake, focused, anchored. But she couldn't stop seeing him. Elia's broken, mechanical, tortured into something that barely resembled the man she knew, his human eye flickering with pain, the way he whispered her name, the way he detonated to save her. For 6 years, she believed he had died in the flames. Now she wished he had. A quiet presence approached her. "Hail." She didn't speak immediately. She simply stepped beside Rowan, hands clasped behind her back. "You shouldn't be alone right now," Hale said softly. Rowan didn't look at her. "I've been alone longer than you know." "I know," Hale whispered, "but you don't have to stay that way." Rowan's jaw clenched. "If I fall apart now, everything he suffered for will be for nothing." Hale nodded gently. "I'm not asking you to fall apart, just breathe." Rowan exhaled shakily. For a long moment they stood in silence, two women bound not by rank, but by grief neither could fully voice. Finally Hale asked, "Do you want to tell me who he was to you?" Rowan closed her eyes. A painful pause. "When I first joined the Titan," she whispered, "I was the youngest officer on board. He was the first to treat me like I belonged." She swallowed. "He taught me everything, challenged me, believed in me more than anyone." Hale listened quietly. "He had this way," Rowan continued, "of making the worst days feel survivable. I used to think if the world burned down, I'd want him beside me." Her voice cracked. "And that's exactly what happened." Hale placed a hand gently on her arm. Rowan didn't pull away. "He called me Sam," Rowan said, her tone fragile. "No one else ever did." Hale's voice softened. "Then he loved you, even if he never said it." Rowan wiped her eyes discreetly. "And I left him to die." "You survived," Hale said firmly. "You didn't abandon him, you lived, and now you're fighting for him." Rowan inhaled slowly, trying to let those words settle somewhere deeper than guilt. But grief had sharp edges. Later that night, the Admiral summoned them to the operations room. He stood over the main display, face pale with tension. "We've intercepted a new signal," he said. Rowan's pulse spiked. "From Redden." "No," the Admiral shook his head. "Worse, from PACCOM headquarters." Rowan stepped closer. "What did they say?" He turned the screen. A simple message blinked. "Authorized. Reinstatement of VADM REDDIN. Order, assume command of Task Force 7. Effective immediately." Rowan's heart stopped. Hale whispered, That's your task force." Rowan stared at the message, her breath sharp, her chest tightening. "They're replacing me." The Admiral clenched his fists. "He's coming here, Rowan." Rowan lifted her eyes to meet his. "Good." The Admiral blinked. "Good." Rowan's voice lowered to a cold, controlled calm. "If he's coming," she said, "he's not running. That means he still needs something." Hale swallowed. "What could he possibly need from you?" Rowan turned toward the window, watching the moon slice across the waves like a blade. "He took Elia's. He hid the Titan truth. He tried to erase me." Her eyes narrowed. "But he failed." She drew a long, steady breath. "And now he wants what I know." Hale's eyes widened. "Ma'am, what do you know?" Rowan looked at them both. The pain in her eyes was still there. But beneath it, something harder. Something dangerous. I know the real reason the Titan burned, she whispered. Hale's breath hitched. You never told us. Rowan nodded slowly. I wasn't ready. She turned fully, the weight of 6 years of silence finally poised to break. But now I am. And the truth she had buried in flames and smoke and grief, pressed against her throat, demanding to be spoken. But there was something darker behind her eyes. Something she had never told anyone. Something she swore she'd take to her grave. Because the Titan disaster, Rowan said quietly, wasn't sabotage. She looked up, her voice razor-sharp. It was a cover-up. And in the next breath, her voice dropped into a whisper. And I was the one they meant to kill. Why did the air feel heavier the moment she finally said the words out loud? The entire operations room seemed to freeze, screens humming, lights dimmed, officers stunned into silence. Rowan stood in the center, not as a commander, not as a survivor, but as someone finally cracking open the truth that had been carved into her bones for 6 years. Hale's voice trembled. Ma'am, what do you mean you were the one they meant to kill? Rowan looked up slowly. Her voice was steady, but her eyes carried a storm. The Titan wasn't targeted because of its mission, or its cargo, or its crew. A breath. They targeted it because of me. The Admiral stepped forward, disbelief etched across his face. Rowan, that doesn't make sense. It makes perfect sense, she murmured, if you know what I was carrying. Hale swallowed. What were you carrying? Rowan approached the central display, her fingers brushing the steel edge as though grounding herself before stepping into the memories she had avoided for years. 6 years ago, she began quietly, I was given an intelligence packet, a sealed drive, no digital signature, no sender, just coordinates and a note, hand to no one, delivered directly to PACCOM. The Admiral frowned, but standard procedure. Exactly, Rowan cut in. It broke every protocol, I questioned it. I was told to stay silent. Her voice hardened. I opened it anyway. The room held its breath. It contained evidence that someone was selling classified fleet movements, our fleet movements, to an unknown buyer. She met the Admiral's eyes. The seller was a flag officer, and the account signatures traced back to Vice Admiral Marcus Redden. The Admiral staggered back. Hale gasped softly. Rowan continued, her tone almost hollow. I hadn't even processed what I was reading before the alarm started, before the fire. She shut her eyes. Before the retreat order. Hale whispered. He tried to erase the evidence. Rowan nodded, and everyone who saw it. Her voice tightened, including Elia's. The room fell silent. Grief hung in the air like smoke. Rowan stepped away from the table. Now you understand why he rebuilt Elia's, why he left that ship drifting, why the voice called my name. Redden fears one thing more than exposure. Your memory, Hale finished softly. Rowan nodded, because I didn't burn in the Titan, and I didn't forget. Before anyone could speak, an alarm blared through the ship. Unidentified aircraft approaching, the radar officer shouted. High altitude descending fast. The Admiral turned sharply. Who is it? A second officer's voice cracked. Sir, it's a Navy transport jet. Transponder verified. Passenger manifest says Vice Admiral Redden. Rowan didn't flinch. Hale whispered, he's coming for you. No, Rowan said quietly. He's coming to finish what he started. The Admiral straightened. What are your orders? Rowan inhaled. The weight of Elia's, of the Titan, of 6 years of silence pressed down on her, but her eyes sharpened with something new. Resolve. Let him board, she said. Hale stared at her. Ma'am. We do this cleanly, Rowan continued. No firefight, no chaos. I talked to him alone. Her voice steadied. He won't expect that. The Admiral hesitated. Rowan, he's dangerous. So am I. Minutes later, The Aegis Dawn's landing pad glowed under incoming lights. The transport jet cut through the night sky, descending like a predator circling prey. Rowan stood on the deck alone, the wind pulling at her uniform, her posture steady but her breath slow with controlled fury. The Admiral watched from a distance. The crew held their lines silently, some gripping railings, others whispering prayers. The jet touched down. The hatch opened. Vice Admiral Marcus Redden stepped onto the deck with the calm arrogance of a man who believed the world bent for him. His uniform was immaculate, his expression unreadable, his eyes cold. He slowed when he saw Rowan. "Commander Rowan," he said, voice smooth, "you're a difficult woman to kill." Rowan's jaw tightened. "I've had practice surviving people like you." He smirked. "You look tired." "You look guilty," she replied. Redden stepped closer, hands clasped behind him as if this were nothing more than a casual inspection. "I heard you've been chasing ghosts," he said. "Dangerous habit." Rowan's stare was ice. "I found one," he said. "Hello." A flicker, barely visible, crossed Redden's expression before he masked it. Rowan didn't blink. "You experimented on him." Redden's lips curved. "He was already dying. I simply made use of a fatting asset." Rowan's breath trembled. "He was a human being, someone who trusted you." "He was weak," Redden said. "Like you, too emotional, too moral." Rowan stepped forward. "And that's why you burned the Titan, because you knew I had something that could expose you." Redden chuckled. "You were a distraction. That ship had assets I needed contained." "Ilia's was not an asset," Rowan said through clenched teeth. Redden leaned in close. "Ilia's was a message." The rage that erupted inside her felt cold, not fiery, not explosive, but sharp and focused, like the edge of a blade forged from grief itself. "And his final act," Redden added, "was to lead you to me perfectly." Rowan didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't let the fury break her. "You made one mistake, Admiral," she whispered. Redden raised an eyebrow. "And what's that?" Rowan lifted her eyes, calm, steady, unshakable. "You forgot I survived." His smile faltered. Rowan took one step back. "You're under arrest for treason, sabotage, murder, and the unlawful experimentation of a naval officer." Redden laughed, actually laughed. "Arrest? You have no proof, no authority, no witnesses." Rowan glanced toward the shadows behind him. Hale stepped forward, then two sailors, then the Admiral. One by one, officers emerged from the dark, every one of them having heard the entire exchange. Redden's face drained of color. Rowan's voice softened, nearly breaking. "The man you tortured gave his life to warn me, and now he finally gets justice." Redden lunged for his sidearm, but Rowan moved first. She didn't strike from anger. She struck from truth. Her hand seized his wrist, twisted, and locked it behind him in a single, controlled motion. The sailors closed in, disarming him fully and pinning him to the deck. Redden screamed, "You think this ends with me? You think you've saved anything?" Rowan knelt beside him. Her voice was quiet, almost gentle. "No," she whispered, "but I saved myself." His eyes widened, not in fear, but in rage that someone he thought powerless had finally stood taller than him. Rowan stood slowly. "Take him below." As he was dragged away, Redden roared curses into the wind. Rowan didn't watch him go. Her eyes drifted instead to the horizon, where the silhouette of the burning vessel had vanished beneath the waves. Hale approached cautiously. "Ma'am, are you all right?" Rowan exhaled, a breath she'd carried for 6 years. "No," she said honestly, "but I will be." The Admiral stepped beside her. "You did something tonight few could have done." Rowan didn't answer immediately. She looked up at the stars, the same sky that watched her survive the Titan, the same sky Ilias once said was always kinder at sea. "I wasn't strong," she said softly. "I was just tired of being silent." Hale nodded. What now? Rowan let the wind wash over her. Now, she said, we rebuild what he tried to break. And Elias, Hale whispered. Rowan closed her eyes, and for the first time her grief felt lighter, like a burden finally allowed to breathe. He saved me twice, she murmured. The least I can do is live the life he wanted for me. A long silence passed between them. Then Rowan said something almost to herself. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. She looked at the horizon one more time. It simply acts. And this time, she walked forward not as a survivor of the Titan, not as a ghost of her past, but as the woman who refused to let fire decide her fate. Fleet Commander Samantha Rowan, alive. And finally free.